My name is Bruno Moreland, and I teach AP African American Studies. And in this series, I'm going to go over all the required sources in the AP African American Studies curriculum. Today, we're looking at Unit 1.7, Western Central Africa, the Kingdom of the Kongo. Now, to give you a little bit of context, the Kingdom of the Kongo covers the modern-day countries of Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's about 60,000 square miles, and it's about roughly 2 times the size of Portugal. That's the European country that first sailed down the coast of Africa and made contact with this kingdom. In 1491, as a result of this contact, the King Nzinga Nkuwu, converted to Christianity and adopted the name João I. One of his sons, Nzinga Mbemba, also adopted Christianity and later adopted the name Afonso I. This voluntary conversion to Christianity created a good trading relationship between the Kingdom of the Kongo and Portugal. The Kingdom of the Kongo traded textiles, salt, ivory, and copper, and the Portuguese brought in some gunpowder weapons and also some other textiles. Because it was a voluntary conversion, there was a wider acceptance amongst the people in the Kingdom of the Kongo to convert to Christianity. And that resulted in a new syncretic version of African Catholicism. When King João I died, there was a battle for succession of the throne. Previously to the adoption of Christianity, the king of the Kingdom of the Kongo was chosen by a complex political structure in which the offsprings of the king had a right to claim the throne, but they had to be accepted by other members of the royal family. So war of succession broke out after the king's death, and Afonso I started to battle against one of his half-brothers who had not converted to Christianity. In one of the battles, Afonso I was said to have help from the Portuguese, but also he laid down and prayed to St. James or Santiago, and he claimed that as a result of that, he was able to eventually come out victorious in this battle for succession. As a show for his devotion, he ended up building lots of churches in the Kingdom of the Kongo. He studied Portuguese and read the Bible every day, and he even started to send his sons and other noble sons to Portugal to study Portuguese and learn how to read the Bible, and then also train them to be priests so that they could continue to spread Christianity within the Kingdom of the Kongo. So the first required source that we have, that we're looking at here, is the Triple Crucifix from the 16th to the 17th century. This cross is meant to symbolize the Holy Trinity in Christianity, that is God, His Son Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. But there's also something more unique to this type of cross, this triple crucifix. It's called the Caracava cross, and it first started to become popular after the year 1000 or 1100 in Spain. At this time, Spain had been conquered by the Moors, and a priest was said to have prayed to the angels to have a cross so that he can continue to pray and worship the Christian God. This artistic style of crucifix is the one that eventually the angels brought to him, and he was able to continue practicing his religion. Another thing that's unique about this story, and it also relates back to Africa, is that that same priest showed the cross to the Moor king, and as a result of the miracle, the Moor king also converted to Christianity. So it has a history of being used in converting people who weren't Christian before. We can see that the cross is made out of wood and the figures on the cross are made out of brass. This gives us a little bit more information about the technology that was available to the people of the Congo. So metalworking is something that they are familiar with, and then they stylize it also into their crafts. One of the reasons why we see this as an artifact of the new syncretic religion is because the figures on the cross are definitely done in an art style that is more similar to African art as opposed to European art. And finally, the cross itself is a symbol of syncretism. One of the reasons why the people in the Kingdom of the Kongo so readily accepted Christianity when it was brought to them by the Portuguese was because in their own cosmologies, the cross was an important symbol. And so when they saw that the Portuguese also had the cross as part of their religion, then it seemed as a divine message to them to adopt this new religion. The second required source is a letter from King Nzinga Mbemba to João III, the Portuguese king. So at this point, Afonso I is writing a letter to the Portuguese king about 35 years after the conversion of the Kingdom of the Kongo. And from here, we start to see that there are some inequalities in the trade relationship between the Kingdom of the Kongo and Portugal. Portugal started to involve itself in the slave trade and using enslaved labor on sugarcane plantations off the coast of Africa and then later down in Brazil. King Afonso I notes that there's an over-reliance on the people of the Congo's wants and desires for Portuguese goods, and they will go to great lengths in order to get these goods from the Portuguese. The Portuguese themselves are starting to only accept enslaved people as a means for trade. So yes, the Kingdom of the Congo was involved in the slave trade with the Portuguese, but they didn't enslave their own people. Instead, they only sold people into slavery that were prisoners of war from the other surrounding regions that they fought against. This is something that's noted in the letter from Afonso I because he's talking about how the Portuguese merchants are enslaving or kidnapping people that are supposed to be free and citizens of the Kingdom of the Congo, or that the merchants that they're trading with in the Kingdom of the Congo will go out and kidnap and enslave others who are not meant to be enslaved. So let's look at a couple of excerpts from this letter. He begins with, "Sir, your highness should know how our kingdom is being lost in so many ways that it is convenient to provide for the necessary remedy, since this is caused by the excessive freedom given by your agents and officials to the men and merchants who are allowed to come to this kingdom to set up shops with goods and many things which have been prohibited by us and which they spread through our kingdoms and domains in such abundance that many of our vassals, whom we had in obedience, do not comply because they have the things in greater abundance than we ourselves. And it was with these things that we have them content and subjected under our vassalage and jurisdiction. So it is doing a great harm not only to the service of God, but the security and peace of our kingdom and state as well." So in this letter, King Afonso I is asking the Portuguese king to intervene with the Portuguese merchants. He's asking João III to intervene and get his merchants to follow the rules that the Kingdom of the Congo is setting for their trade. One of the greatest impacts that Afonso I is saying is happening in this letter is that it's causing the depopulation of the Kingdom of the Congo because the rate of the slave trade is growing so heavily. Here's what he says. "Sir, it is the corruption and licentiousness that our country is being completely depopulated, and your highness should not agree with this nor accept it as in your service. And to avoid it, we need from those kingdoms no more than some priests and a few people to reach in schools, and no other goods except wine and flour for the holy sacrament. That is why we beg of your highness to help and assist us in this matter, commanding your factors that they should nor send here either merchants or wares, because it is our will that in these kingdoms there should be not any trade of slaves nor outlet for them." He goes on to detail about the experience of people who were being illegally kidnapped and being sold into the slave trade. Here's what he says. "And as soon as they are taken by the white men, they are immediately ironed and branded with fire, and when they are carried to be embarked, if they are caught by our guards' men, the whites allege that they have bought them, but they cannot say from whom, so that it is our duty to do justice and to restore to the freemen their freedmen. But it cannot be done if your subjects feel so offended as they claim to be." From this, we can foreshadow a little bit about what the future trade relationship will be between the Kingdom of the Congo and Portugal. Portugal will only be interested in continuing its activity in the slave trade, especially as the sugarcane plantations across the Atlantic start to be more profitable for the Portuguese. They're only going to want more enslaved people to fill in as labor in those plantations. The slave trade grows so heavily in this area that about 25% of the 13 million people that made the transatlantic journey as enslaved people came from this region in modern-day Angola. The slave trade continued to destabilize the region for another 200 years. Portugal in the 1600s invaded the region trying to take full control of it, and then they were finally successful after 200 years of trying in the 1800s. Various different regional kings and queens, as we'll see in a later unit, are going to try and stand up to the Portuguese with limited success. So those are the two documents that we had for this unit. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you come back for the next video in which we talk about kinship and leadership in African kingdoms. Thank you.